For more on this, let's bring in Aviation and Tourism Consultant Anita Mendiratta, who joins us from Los Angeles. Good to speak to you again, Anita. Now, how quickly can airlines rebuild their fuel inventories once the Strait of Hormuz is fully operational?
It's an important question you ask, because what's really critical at this point in time is the concept of stability. That hoping that this new arrangement and the new agreement gets signed off and we actually have an opening of the Strait of Hormuz. What's very important is the stability of the tankers moving through the Strait of Hormuz, which allows the jet fuel to actually be refined, which is going to take about 2 to 3 months to see some momentum in that regard. We need supply to be built up globally, which is going to be about 3 to 4 months, and then about 6 months until we know that both supply and price are going to be able to find a stable level that allows global aviation to return to some degree of normality that we had before the conflict. So we're looking very much into the latter part of 2026 before we really do see some degree of consistency of confidence, of supply, and therefore aviation movement.
And will this diplomatic breakthrough immediately reverse the profit warnings that we've heard from major carriers?
Not immediately, because exactly that point, we're still, there's enormous hope coming through what's going to be now the resolution of the agreement and the conviction that we can open up the Strait of Hormuz, that the world can open up the Strait of Hormuz with, again, stability of movement going through and knowing that there's going to be confidence in global energy supply. But it's not going to be immediate for two reasons. A, again, it's about making sure that we have global supplies, but also the airline industry has to purchase their jet fuel supplies on contracts that can be between 3 weeks and 3 months. It all depends on the airline and the contracts that are in place. That sets in place pricing on jet fuel that gets translated into what ultimately the passengers are charged. So again, we're looking at about the next 6 months of stabilization of supply, of pricing, and ultimately of global travel. So this is not going to be immediate in any way, but hopefully there's an immediate degree of hope that brings in confidence and stability going into the second half of the year.
And how is the aviation sector fundamentally restructuring its energy security strategies after this year's disruption?
This has very much demonstrated the need for independence when it comes to global markets around the world and global economies. And when it comes to global aviation, it's looking at it from the point of view of not only jet fuel supply, which we've seen heavily constrained for the last 6 months, but very, very importantly, the future of flight, which is about sustainable aviation. So this has put the spotlight very much on the need to move to governments investing in sustainable aviation fuel, which is a very easy way to plug and play, quite honestly, with existing aircraft to reduce emissions by up to 80% compared to current flying, and to invest in new airline technology. And we have exceptional aircraft coming out from both Boeing and Airbus that allow that. So if anything, the crisis that's taken place in 2026 has elevated the call to action for the world to really start investing in sustainable aviation, to move from existing supplies to supplies that allow us to not only have much more freedom of jet fuel when it comes to the world being able to move, but also a much more sustainable way of developing aviation that allows aviation to continue to grow, which means global travel and trade, and doing so in a way that lessens its impact on the environment. So the net result is very much positive as we all work towards net zero 2050. So it's been an interesting situation where the global crisis in the Middle East has actually put a spotlight on the need to really ramp up all of the investment taking place towards the future of sustainable aviation with sustainable aviation fuels and technology.
And what kind of changes do you think are necessary to ease pressures on passengers and travelers?
Oh, goodness, there's a huge amount of pressure still on passengers from the point of view of simply confidence. Their sense that when they book their travel, flights are going to be secure, flight paths are going to be secure. But we're going to see very, very quickly, and we're also seeing already in the GCC, which is a primary air corridor for the world, about 30% of global travel going through that air zone. We're already seeing that airlines like Emirates, Etihad, Qatar Airways, they're up to to between 85 and 95% of their schedules pre-conflict. So they're already returning to a high degree of capacity availability, seat availability, and therefore confidence coming back in travelers being able to fly through those regions and through those airlines. We see, for instance, Australia has already dropped their level of warning and advisory going through the Middle East, which allows now passengers from that part of the world to utilize the Middle East, which is one of their preferred corridors for global travel. So we're moving in the right direction, dare I say, but this agreement, the stability of this agreement is going to be vital to be able to literally open up the world of travel again with a high degree of confidence, higher degrees of jet fuel supply, and ultimately a lowering of travel costs.
And this upcoming summer period is expected to be a difficult one for travellers. Do those challenges still uphold as we're seeing a fall in these prices in fuel?
It is a difficult one from the point of view, again, we have capacity constraints, so there aren't as many seats, and there's very high demand. I'm currently in the US, the FIFA World Cup is already kicked off, and we know that there's a significant amount of travel coming in this direction. So there's a great deal of desire to travel. And this is what's very interesting, that despite the conflict this year, despite all of the concerns around the people around the world being able to travel demand continues to surge. The world wants to travel. It's simply about identifying which airlines, which routes, and which price levels people are comfortable with. But thankfully, again, we're seeing after many weeks, there's a very good reason for hope. We need to stabilize those hope levels to be able to stabilize the ability for aviation to bring people back in the air, bring air cargo back in the air, and really unlock global aviation once more. Because aviation will never let the world down, even when their margins are cut to almost zero, as they have been this year because of jet fuel pricing.
Anita Mendiratta, Aviation and Tourism Consultant, great to speak to you. Thank you for your insights.
Thank you.